Hi everyone and welcome to this week's market commentary. I hope you're all doing tremendously well and had a great long weekend. We're obviously coming to you a little bit later this week as it's the bank holiday yesterday. With regards to the commentary this week, we're going to have a look at the usual markets. There's one currency pair that I really want to highlight because it's looking very interesting for a possible pullback. We'll have an update on crude, which is the trade we're currently live in from a swing perspective, and we'll have a look at one or two others as well. Now, I'm just going to start off with the American markets because I actually think because America does play a massive part in leading the world economies, and there are variables to that, and obviously you can look at the likes of China and countries of that nature as well, and they'll have an impact. But there's no doubt from a stock market point of view, if you read the American market, that can actually give you a clue as why some other markets are playing the way that they are. And what we've ultimately had is we had a little bit of a move higher the previous week, if you can remember from last week's commentary, but we've pretty much settled within to the range yet again. So one of the one of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of markets maybe not offering quite as much is yet again the American markets are within quite a tight range. Now the problem with that is it means that we've got to sit in our hands a little bit, and it means that the number of opportunities, especially from a swing perspective, have definitely been a little bit quieter, and that for me is the primary culprit. Now, as we keep an eye on this, and we've got to keep tuned in because it only takes one bit of news or one bit of buying or selling, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose and we get some great movement. And if we switch off, fall asleep a bit, we could easily miss those opportunities. But just by highlighting that box on the Dow, for instance, the one thing that I would be looking for, or the one thing that I would make sure and would certainly recommend to you guys is put an alert in at those levels through your broker, so at least you don't have to be sitting watching every single day. But certainly the minute we hit those highs or lows, you can then start looking at potential opportunities, whether it's breakouts, whether it's we break out and then pull back. Obviously the reversals, I wouldn't recommend those at this moment in time because we have been consolidating for a while, so the probability is stacking up. We're more likely to break out than we are to reverse at those levels. So that's what I would recommend in that regard. Just looking at the Nasdaq now, if you remember, the Nasdaq actually made a new high and it's done a bit of a pullback, but it's just cooling off. So again, it's not showing the best momentum that we would really want, ideally, for opportunity. And what's interesting, and this is where support and resistance become really important, one of the things that I highlighted was I really wanted to see it come up a bit further. And this is why when we've pulled back, we've now come into this area, and this is the issue. When we break a resistance, we want to get far enough away from it to pull back into it. If it's too shallow, we often pull back through it, and then sometimes where we lose some of the probability is where we were looking for that resistance to become support. Because we break it, we end up reacting at it again, so it might be that we see the downside. So we just lose the probability, and that's why when we're pullback traders, we want to see good momentum. Now, moving into crude, so this is the one that we're highlighting. We've been keeping a very, very close eye. So we had this breakout here back on the 15th of April, and then what we got last, or for the subsequent maybe 2 weeks, we got this consolidation, and we've now broken out of that. So we've taken this is one of our swing consolidation breakout strategy trades, and that's now triggered last week, and we're looking to just see if we'll get some upside. Now it's interesting, one of the things that I've done a lot, I've spent a massive amount of time on, is actually learning about consolidations themselves. My predominant strategy has always been breakouts. I will occasionally take a pullback or a reversal, but primarily I'll focus on breakouts. Now one of the things that I've learned is how do we break out is just as important as finding a consolidation. And one of the things that you'll notice, if I probably take it down to a 4 hour, you'll notice how we consolidated, broke out, and we've almost started doing a similar type thing again. And this is one of the patterns that I've certainly noticed, is that a consolidation breakout, that it can be followed by a few different things. And one of those things is a shorter smaller consolidation like we've seen here, and that often actually is a positive signal that we might see some further upside. So you'll just see We break out this consolidation and then we get this smaller one, and now we're just starting to break out of this today, and that's actually a really positive sign from the experience that I've certainly gained from studying consolidation breakouts. So we'll see what happens with this one. So actually from a short-term perspective, you could be looking for possible short-term breakouts and pullbacks for the long on crude, even as a day trader as well as the swing. One that's really interesting right now is going to be US dollar versus Singapore dollar. Now, if I take this back to the daily time frame, we'll see that we've been trending down, and we're very much in the early stages of the downtrend. But we're now we've had this pullback after the run down here. So from that perspective, now that we've pulled back, we're getting into an area where it might be really interesting to see if we get an opportunity. So if you're a pullback trader, where we are right now, or even a little bit higher up, could be really interesting from a pullback perspective. So this is one you definitely want to be keeping an eye on for possible opportunity, and we'll see what happens with it. We've obviously had a lovely reversal with this one. I'm just going to plot on the monthlies for last month. You'll notice that we came into the 200 moving average, which is also the S3 monthly pivot. And although we've come into a new month, we're now seeing the upside in that. And that's where it might be. We want to get back to this level here, which is the previous level of support that was broken, the minor level at about 13,410. And that's where we might actually then see the pullback opportunities to come back down. Obviously, if it breaks much further than that, just as we discussed in the Nasdaq, we wouldn't really want to touch it. Now, just a couple of quick ones to look at, and these ones are more just interesting from a price point of view. They're not the best from a strategic point of view at this stage, but they will be worth keeping an eye on if they continue to show the same evidence that they're starting to show. First one's Aussie dollar, and what you'll notice with the Aussie dollar is it's recently made a new high. Now, a bit like the Nasdaq, it's not done it with enough momentum that I would be confident to trade, but I want to keep an eye on it now, because if this can now do a move higher, then we're going to start to see some potential upside momentum, and that's where we might get some possible breakout and pullback opportunities. So I definitely want to keep an eye on that one. I don't expect anything to happen, within this week, but now it's just starting to show some interest. Having made that new high, it might be that after all of that sell-off, we're now potentially going into a new uptrend. Has to prove itself a bit more, but certainly keep it on your radar. Now, the other one that's slightly similar to that was pound dollar. It's not quite as clean, but again, we've had the big sell-off in a lot of the pairs that are running against the American dollar, where they've sold off against the American dollar. And it's just interesting to see that we're now showing signs that the overall downtrend is finished. So actually, if we can potentially break these levels here, that could be really nice for some potential upside. I'm not as keen on the downside, because we're definitely in a much more volatile area. So there's quite a bit going on, guys. We're definitely getting movement. Obviously, a lot of markets are still within these ranges, which personally I would put down to the American markets being in their ranges, because once we can break out of those, that creates money flow based on money moving from a buying or selling perspective, and that can often help get currencies moving. We've obviously got the election coming up this week as well, so it'll be interesting to see if that has any impact on the British currency, the FTSE, etc. So we should keep an eye on that and just be aware of that if we're going to trade any of those currencies or the index itself. Just be aware that we might get some reaction, although it does look as though we're probably going to be in for another potential coalition. So you'll probably find the actual outcome of the election, we won't truthfully know it maybe going into next week. Okay, so that's us for this week's commentary. Have a fabulous trading week, and I'll catch up with you next week in next week's market commentary. Bye for now.